I'd measured every gram of leafy greens, every piece of grilled chicken, only to stand empty-handed before the office fridge 3 days in a row. That hollow container stared back at me like it was laughing. 2 weeks of stolen lunches, and HR called it a minor inconvenience. But when someone takes your carefully prepared meal, the one thing you control in a chaotic workday, it's never just about the food, it's about respect. And I was done being disrespected. My name is Isabel Morgan, and I'm the kind of person who color codes her calendar and alphabetizes her spice rack. At 29, I've built a reputation as the most meticulous UX designer at Architect Studios, a mid-sized software company tucked away in a gleaming glass tower in Columbus, Ohio. My desk is a monument to an organization, wireframes aligned at perfect right angles, sticky notes arranged by priority in a rainbow gradient. But it's my lunch routine that really showcases my need for control. Every Sunday, I spend 3 hours meal prepping. It's not just about saving money or eating healthy, though with my laundry list of food allergies, restaurant roulette isn't exactly an option. It's about creating order in a world of chaotic sprint meetings and last-minute design pivots. My wooden bento box, a gift from my trip to Tokyo last year, holds perfectly portioned compartments. Protein in the largest section, complex carbs in the medium, vegetables and fruit in the smaller ones. Each meal is a small masterpiece of nutritional balance and visual appeal. The office kitchen at Architect tells you everything you need to know about our company culture. On the surface, it's Instagram-worthy, marble countertops, a commercial-grade espresso machine that probably costs more than my car, and a smart fridge that nobody knows how to properly operate. But beneath that polished veneer lurks the real Architect, passive-aggressive post-it notes about dirty dishes, a microwave that's been broken for 6 months, and an unspoken hierarchy about who gets to use the good coffee pods. Our open floor plan means everyone can see everyone else's business, which creates this weird dynamic where we're all friendly on the surface but silently competing underneath. The developers judge the marketing team for their fluff work. Marketing mocks the designers for being too precious about pixels. And everyone pretends not to notice when someone's having a breakdown in the phone booth that masquerades as a privacy pod. My carefully crafted lunches had become something of a spectacle. Coworkers would hover as I unpacked my bento, making comments like, "Wow, that looks like something from a food blog," or, "I could never have that kind of discipline." I'd smile and make self-deprecating jokes about being a bit type A, but secretly, I loved the attention. In a workplace where everyone was trying to out-achieve each other, my lunches were my small, daily victory. Then they started disappearing. The first time, I assumed I'd forgotten to pack it. The second time, I thought maybe I'd left it in my car. But by the third time, when I found my empty bento box abandoned in the sink, still dirty, like someone couldn't even be bothered to rinse it, I knew. Someone was stealing my lunch. And they weren't even trying to hide it anymore. The theft continued for 2 weeks straight, and with each missing meal, my frustration morphed into something darker, a simmering rage that I had to swallow down with vending machine pretzels and lukewarm coffee. I'd started documenting everything in a spreadsheet because that's what Isabel Morgan does when faced with chaos. She creates data. Monday, March 4th. Teriyaki salmon with jasmine rice. Gone by 12:15 p.m. Tuesday, March 5th. Quinoa Buddha bowl with tahini dressing. Vanished by 12:30 p.m. Wednesday, March 6th. Homemade pad thai with tamarind sauce. Missing by noon. Each entry included the time I'd placed my lunch in the fridge when I'd discovered it missing, and any potential witnesses in the kitchen. I'd even started taking photos of my bento box in the fridge each morning, like some sort of culinary crime scene investigator. When I brought my evidence to HR, Cheryl from People Operations barely glanced up from her screen. "Have you tried labeling your food?" she asked, as if I hadn't already plastered my name across every surface of that wooden box in permanent marker. "It is labeled," I said through gritted teeth. "My name, my desk number, even a please do not take sticker with a smiley face, because I thought being friendly might help." Cheryl sighed like I was asking her to solve world hunger. Look, without concrete proof of who's taking it, there's not much we can do. The security camera in the kitchen hasn't worked since the last office renovation. Maybe try eating at your desk. I wanted to scream. Instead, I channeled my inner Minnesota nice, even though I'm from Indiana, and thanked her for her time. But inside, I was seething. This wasn't just about food anymore. It was about the principle. Someone in this office thought they could take what was mine, repeatedly, without consequences. My suspicions had started to crystallize around Craig Donnelly from marketing. He sat in the bank of desks directly across from mine, close enough that I could hear him chomping on chips during every Zoom call. Craig was the kind of guy who showed up to work 15 minutes late with Starbucks, complained loudly about being so busy while spending half his day on ESPN, and somehow still got promoted last quarter. The evidence was circumstantial, but damning. He'd made comments about my lunches before, always with this weird edge of entitlement. Must be nice to have time for all that cooking, he'd said once, eyeing my Vietnamese spring rolls. My ex used to make stuff like that, miss having a personal chef. The way he'd laughed, like it was a joke. But his eyes had tracked my bento box as I'd walked to the fridge. Then there were the patterns. Craig always took his lunch break right after mine was scheduled. On days when my food went missing, he'd return to his desk looking particularly satisfied, sometimes even patting his stomach in that obnoxious way men do when they've eaten well. Once, I swear I caught a whiff of my signature sesame ginger marinade wafting from his direction. My coworkers were no help. Maybe you're being paranoid, suggested Janet from QA, while nervously glancing at Craig's empty desk. It could be anyone. Maybe someone's kid grabbed the wrong lunch. Right. Because so many children were wandering our badge access office, stealing gourmet meals. Even my work friend, Marcus, the front-end developer, just shrugged. Dude, that sucks. But what can you do? Just buy lunch like the rest of us. But he didn't understand. With my soy allergy, gluten sensitivity, and lactose intolerance, just buying lunch meant risking an afternoon of stomach cramps or worse. My carefully crafted meals weren't just food. They were medicine, armor against my body's rebellion. I started eating sad desk salads from the overpriced cafe downstairs, spending $15 a day on wilted lettuce and rubbery chicken. Each bite tasted like defeat. Meanwhile, Craig seemed to grow more brazen, actually humming while heating up his mysteriously home-cooked meals in the microwave. Meals that, coincidentally, started appearing right around the time mine began disappearing. The breaking point was approaching. I could feel it building like pressure in a pot. And I knew that soon. Something would have to give. But I'm Isabel Morgan. I don't lose control. I don't make scenes. I make plans. I had reached my limit on Thursday, March 21st, the spring equinox, ironically, a day meant for new beginnings. I'd spent the entire previous evening crafting my grandmother's beef lasagna, the dish that had gotten me through college finals and bad breakups. Layer by layer, I'd built it with the kind of care usually reserved for architectural blueprints. The meat sauce simmered for 3 hours with San Marzano tomatoes and fresh basil from my windowsill garden. The bechamel whisked to silk-smooth perfection. The imported pecorino romano grated by hand because pre-shredded cheese is an abomination. This wasn't just any lunch. This was my celebration meal for being selected to lead the UI redesign for our biggest client, Novatech Industries. After 6 months of late nights and countless iterations, I'd finally proven myself worthy of a project that could make or break careers at Architect. The lasagna was my private victory lap, my moment of pure, edible joy in a pressure cooker environment where celebrations were limited to awkward happy hours with warm beer. I placed it in the fridge at 8:47 a.m., taking my usual photo for documentation. The wooden bento box looked particularly elegant that morning, the rich red sauce visible through the glass divider I'd specially installed for saucy dishes. I even left a note on top. Isabel's celebration lunch, please don't take. The smiley face was my last attempt at civility, a desperate hope that basic human decency might prevail. By 12:30 p.m., it was gone. Not just stolen, desecrated. The empty bento box sat abandoned on the counter, sauce-stained and reeking of garlic, like a crime scene the perpetrator couldn't be bothered to clean up. Someone had even used my personal bamboo utensils and left them dirty in the sink. I stood there, trembling with a rage so pure it felt almost holy. Around me, the kitchen buzzed with the usual lunch crowd, people heating up their cup noodles, complaining about the broken ice machine, gossiping about who was getting laid off next. Nobody noticed the woman having a silent breakdown by the sink, clutching an empty wooden box like it contained the ashes of her dignity. "Forgot your lunch again." Craig's voice cut through my fury fog. He stood by the microwave, patting his visibly full stomach with one hand while holding a can of Diet Coke with the other. His smile was what did it, that satisfied, cat who ate the canary grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Someone stole it. Again." He made this exaggerated surprised face, all raised eyebrows and pursed lips. "Oh man, that's rough. Good thing the food trucks are outside today. The Korean BBQ one's pretty decent if you don't mind the line." I watched him closely, cataloging every micro-expression. The slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, the way he avoided direct eye contact while trying to look sympathetic, the tiny red sauce stain on his collar that he'd missed, my grandmother's sauce, made with the specific brand of oregano that gave it that distinctive color. "You've got something on your shirt," I said, pointing. He glanced down, rubbed at it quickly. "Oh, ketchup from breakfast. You know me, always making a mess." His laugh was too loud, too forced. That's when I noticed it, the faint sheen of oil on his lips, the particular way it caught the fluorescent lights. I'd used truffle oil in the lasagna, just a drizzle on top before baking. It leaves a specific kind of shine, one that doesn't come from regular olive oil or butter. I'd know it anywhere. "Right," I said, maintaining eye contact until he shifted uncomfortably. "Ketchup." He mumbled something about getting back to a meeting and practically fled the kitchen. I stayed there, gripping my empty bento box, watching his retreat. Other coworkers filtered around me, oblivious to the showdown that had just occurred. Janet from QA microwaved her fish, again, sending waves of oceanic stench through the space. Someone complained about the coffee running low. Business as usual at Architect. But I wasn't usual anymore. I was done being the nice girl who labeled her food with smiley faces. Done documenting thefts that no one cared about. Done spending money I didn't have on subpar cafe food while someone else enjoyed the fruits of my labor. Standing in that kitchen, surrounded by the mundane chaos of office life, I made a decision. If HR wouldn't help, if my coworkers would rather enable a thief than rock the boat, if Craig thought he could keep stealing from me with impunity, then I'd handle this myself. And I knew exactly how to do it. I spent that evening researching with the same methodical precision I applied to user interface problems. My laptop screen glowed with tabs about capsaicin levels, Scoville units, and the chemistry of spice. Ghost peppers, but Jalakia, scored over 1 million Scoville heat units, making them roughly 400 times hotter than Tabasco sauce. The more I read, the more a plan crystallized in my mind like frost on a window. The key was subtlety. This couldn't look like revenge. It had to appear like a simple case of someone stealing the wrong lunch. I found a specialty farm in Pennsylvania that shipped overnight, Hellfire Harvest, run by a couple who'd won multiple awards at chili competitions. Their website warned in red letters, "Extreme heat, handle with gloves, not for amateur consumption." Perfect. I ordered their ghost pepper puree, the concentrated essence of capsaicin hell in a small glass jar. When it arrived Saturday morning, I suited up like I was handling hazardous materials. Rubber gloves, goggles I'd borrowed from my craft supplies, even a face mask. The smell alone, when I cracked open the jar, made my eyes water from 3 feet away. The decoy meal needed to be irresistible. I prepared spaghetti with what looked like a basic marinara sauce, the kind of comfort food that screamed, "Steal me," to someone accustomed to free lunches. But this wasn't just any marinara. I'd mixed 3 tablespoons of ghost pepper puree into the tomato base, then added extra sugar and butter to mask the initial heat. The delayed reaction would be crucial. I wanted Craig to get at least a few bites in before the inferno hit. The meatballs were my masterpiece, each one injected with pure ghost pepper oil using a culinary syringe I'd bought for making filled cupcakes. They looked perfectly normal on the outside, little bombs of destruction waiting to detonate. I even added fresh mozzarella on top, which would melt beautifully when reheated, creating an appetizing cheese pull that no food thief could resist. The genius touch? I didn't label the container at all. My labeled lunches had been stolen, so clearly. Craig had developed a taste for my cooking specifically. An anonymous container of homemade Italian comfort food would be too tempting to pass up. He'd assume someone forgot to label it, or maybe that it belonged to one of the new interns who hadn't learned the office protocols yet. Sunday night, I prepared a second, real lunch for myself. A simple turkey sandwich that I'd eat at my desk, making sure everyone saw me with it. The alibi lunch. I'd mentioned casually to Marcus that I was meeting my college roommate for lunch tomorrow. Might be gone for a while. Plant the seeds of absence. I tested the spiced spaghetti myself, just the tiniest touch of sauce on a toothpick. Even that microscopic amount lit my tongue on fire for 20 minutes. I chugged milk, ate bread, sucked on ice cubes. Nothing helped. The ghost peppers had a staying power that regular hot sauce could only dream of. Craig wouldn't know what hit him. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Pathetic fallacy at its finest. I arrived early, placing the unmarked container in the usual spot where I kept my lunch. Second shelf, left side, behind the communal coffee creamer. Then I made a show of putting my labeled sandwich bag in a different section entirely, chatting with early bird Sandra from accounting about my fictional lunch plans. Sarah's picking me up at noon. I lied smoothly, referencing my non-existent college roommate. Haven't seen her in months. We're trying that new Thai place downtown. Sandra nodded absently, already focused on her yogurt parfait. But she'd remember this conversation later. I was certain. Sandra remembered everything, especially details that might become office gossip. I spent the morning in a state of hypervigilance disguised as normal productivity. Every time someone walked past my desk toward the kitchen, my pulse quickened. I forced myself to focus on wireframes, on hex codes, and user flows. But my mind kept drifting to that container of weaponized pasta waiting in the fridge like a landmine. At 11:45, I made another strategic move. I walked to the kitchen with my labeled sandwich, retrieved it openly, and returned to my desk. Several people saw me eating it while working, including Craig, who'd just arrived at his desk with his usual Starbucks. I caught him glancing at me, then at the kitchen, a small frown creasing his forehead. Was Isabel eating at her desk today, breaking her usual routine? By noon, I'd finished my sandwich and made sure to throw the empty bag in my desk trash where it was visible. Then I grabbed my purse and headed for the elevator, calling out to Marcus. "See you in an hour or so. Sarah's always late." But I didn't leave the building. I ducked into the empty conference room that had a perfect view of the kitchen through the glass walls. The stage was set. The trap was baited. Now I just had to wait. I watched from the conference room like a nature documentarian observing a predator in its habitat. Through the glass walls, I had a perfect view of the kitchen and Craig's desk beyond. My phone was ready to record, though I hoped I wouldn't need it. The best revenge is the kind that documents itself. 12:08 p.m. Craig stood up, stretched with that performative way of someone who wants people to know they're taking a break. He strolled toward the kitchen with the confidence of a man who'd never faced consequences. I held my breath as he opened the fridge, his head disappearing behind the stainless steel door. He emerged with my trap, holding the unmarked container up to the light like he was examining a wine vintage. I could see him thinking, no label, homemade, left in the prime lunch real estate spot. His shoulders did that little shrug that meant finders, keepers in Craig speak. He popped it in the microwave, drumming his fingers on the counter while it heated. The smell of tomato sauce and melted cheese wafted even to my hiding spot. Other people entered and left the kitchen, making small talk with Craig about March Madness brackets and weekend plans. He played along, Mr. Casual, like he wasn't about to eat stolen food for the 15th time. The microwave beeped, Craig retrieved the container, gave it a stir, and headed back to his desk. I shifted position to maintain visual contact, my heart hammering against my ribs. He settled into his chair, pulled up what looked like ESPN on one monitor while keeping a work spreadsheet on the other. Classic Craig multitasking. The first bite. He twirled the spaghetti with obvious pleasure, doing that little head nod people do when food hits just right. The second bite included a meatball, which he chewed thoughtfully. I counted silently in my head, knowing the ghost peppers would take about 30 seconds to fully activate. The capsaicin needed time to bind to the pain receptors, to really settle in before the fireworks started. Bite 3, bite 4. He was eating faster now, probably trying to finish before his 12:30 synergy meeting, which everyone knew was just him and his buddy from sales discussing their fantasy football leagues. A glob of sauce dripped onto his desk, and he wiped it with his finger, licking it clean. Then it happened. His chewing slowed first. The expression shifted from satisfaction to confusion, like when you bite into what you think is chocolate chip but turns out to be raisin. He swallowed hard, reached for his coffee. The liquid must have spread the oils further because his eyes suddenly went wide, cartoonishly round. Fuck! The word exploded out of him, loud enough to make Janet from QA Prairie Dog over her cubicle wall. Craig shot up from his chair, the container clattering across his desk, sending sauce splattering across his keyboard and monitor. His face had gone from pale to pink to an alarming shade of red in seconds. He stumbled toward the kitchen, making these weird, gasping sounds like a fish out of water. People were standing now, watching him career off cubicle walls. Water, he croaked. But anyone who knew anything about spice knew water would make it worse. The kitchen became a crime scene of Craig's making. He thrust his entire head under the faucet, water streaming down his expensive shirt. When that didn't work, he yanked open the fridge, grabbing random items, someone's yogurt, a bottle of ranch dressing, Janet's almond milk. He squeezed the ranch directly into his mouth like whipped cream, white dressing dripping down his chin. What the hell, Craig? Janet shrieked, watching him demolish her lunch supplies. Burning. Fuck. Dying. He couldn't form complete sentences. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the ranch dressing and water to create a pathetic slurry. He grabbed paper towels, shoving them in his mouth, then spitting them out immediately. The crowd grew. Someone had their phone out, definitely recording. Multiple people, actually. The head of HR, summoned by the commotion, pushed through the gathered employees. What is going on here? Craig had found a carton of milk, my milk, ironically, from my labeled section of the fridge, and was chugging it desperately. When he finally came up for air, he pointed at the abandoned container on his desk, visible through the kitchen's glass wall. Someone. Poisoned. Food. That was my cue. I walked out of the conference room, purse over my shoulder like I'd just returned from lunch. What's all the commotion? I asked, channeling every community theater performance I'd ever given. Craig's bloodshot eyes locked onto mine. Even through his tears and the dairy mustache, I could see the moment of recognition, of understanding. He knew, and he knew that I knew. Is someone hurt? I asked innocently, then noticed the milk carton in his hand. Oh, that's mine. I keep it for my coffee. I walked over calmly, took it from his unresisting fingers, and placed it back in the fridge. Though it looks like you need it more than I do. The HR head was demanding answers. Craig could barely speak. Someone helpfully brought over the container from his desk, still reeking of ghost pepper marinara. No label, no name, no proof it was meant for anyone in particular. Just an unmarked container of extremely spicy food that someone had chosen to steal. I stood in the emergency HR meeting 20 minutes later. The picture of professional concern. The conference room smelled like a mixture of ranch dressing and fear. Craig sat at the far end of the table, still occasionally whimpering, a glass of milk clutched in his trembling hands. His shirt was destroyed, water stains, ranch streaks, and ghost pepper sauce creating an abstract expressionist nightmare. Cheryl from HR, The same woman who dismissed my complaints weeks ago now wore an expression of barely contained panic. The VP of Operations, David Kim, had been pulled from an investor call. 3 different employees had already posted videos to their Instagram stories before IT could send out a reminder about social media policies. "Let's go through this again," Cheryl said, fingers pressed to her temples. "Craig, you took an unlabeled container from the communal fridge?" "It was. It looked like regular food," Craig rasped, his voice raw. "Who puts ghost peppers in spaghetti?" "Someone who likes spicy food," I suggested mildly. "I mean, it wasn't labeled. How did you know it wasn't someone's specially prepared meal?" Craig's red-rimmed eyes narrowed at me. "It was in your spot. Where you always put your lunch." "My spot?" I pulled out my phone, scrolling to my photos. I documented where I put my lunches for the past month because they kept getting stolen. See? Different spots each day, trying to prevent theft. Today, I ate at my desk. Everyone saw me with my sandwich. Then I went out with my friend Sarah. "You weren't with Sarah," Craig spat. "You were in the—" He stopped, realizing he'd just admitted to looking for me, to checking if I'd actually left. David Kim leaned forward. "Craig, are you saying you intentionally took what you thought was Isabel's lunch?" The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Craig's mouth opened and closed like one of those singing bass wall decorations. "I need to see all your documentation," Cheryl said to me. I'd come prepared, sliding across a folder containing 3 weeks of photos, emails to HR, and my detailed spreadsheet tracking the thefts. 15 stolen lunches, I said calmly. Each one labeled with my name. I reported it multiple times, but was told without proof of who was taking them, nothing could be done. So I started eating at my desk or going out. I paused, letting the implication sink in. I certainly didn't expect anyone to take an unlabeled container. That would be stealing. Marcus from development knocked and entered. "Hey, sorry to interrupt, but facilities wanted me to mention that they found Isabel's bento box in the men's bathroom trash last week. The wooden one with her name engraved on it. Thought it was weird someone would throw that away." I hadn't known about that, but I kept my face neutral while internally adding another tally to Craig's crimes. My grandmother's bento box, a gift from her trip to Japan in the 1960s, thrown away like garbage. "Craig," David's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "Have you been taking other employees' lunches?" "I was hungry," Craig whined. "The food truck lines are too long, and DoorDash is expensive, and—" "You make $95,000 a year," I interrupted, my composure finally cracking. "You drive a BMW. You can afford lunch." More evidence poured in. Janet mentioned seeing Craig with my Turkish meze platter. Sandra from accounting remembered him eating what looked exactly like my pad thai. The intern recalled Craig joking about sampling the international buffet in the fridge. Cheryl pulled up Craig's employee file, her face growing paler by the minute. "You're already on a performance improvement plan for missing client deadlines. This is theft of personal property. Multiple incidents. It's just food." Craig exploded, then immediately grabbed his milk again as the residual capsaicin flared. "It's theft," David corrected, "and creating a hostile work environment. And now we have multiple videos of you destroying the kitchen circulating on social media, tagged with our company name." I watched Craig's world crumble in real time. The man who'd treated the office like his personal cafe was finally facing consequences. His transfer to the satellite office in Youngstown was confirmed by end of day, a lateral move that everyone knew was a career death sentence. No more BMW in the executive parking garage, no more long lunches with his sales buddies. Just a cubicle in a strip mall office park, 40 miles from downtown. "The spaghetti was mine," I said quietly as the meeting concluded. "I like spicy food. It helps with my chronic sinuses. If it had been labeled, I'm sure no one would have taken it by mistake." Craig looked like he wanted to launch across the table at me, but the ghost peppers had taught him about consequences. He shuffled out, still clutching his milk, his career at architect effectively over. Word spread through the office faster than the capsaicin had spread through Craig's mouth. By 3 p.m., 3 people had already asked me for the recipe, just in case they needed to protect their lunches too. The following Tuesday, I unpacked my lunch in the architect kitchen at exactly 12:30 p.m. The space felt different now, charged with a new energy, like the air after a thunderstorm. Conversations quieted when I entered, then resumed in hushed tones. I'd become something of an office legend, the woman who'd weaponized pasta sauce. My wooden bento box, the real one, which facilities had cleaned and returned to me, sat pristine on the counter. I'd prepared honey-glazed salmon with quinoa and roasted vegetables, each component nestled in its designated compartment. The familiar ritual of unpacking my meal felt almost ceremonial now. Is it spicy? Janet from QA asked nervously from across the kitchen, eyeing my lunch like it might explode. Not at all, I smiled, taking a bite. Just regular seasoning today. The kitchen filled with the usual lunch crowd, but something had fundamentally shifted. People labeled their containers with almost aggressive clarity, names in giant letters, some even adding threats of ghost pepper retaliation. The fridge had become a monument to food security, each shelf respecting invisible boundaries that hadn't existed before. Marcus joined me at the small table by the window. Youngstown Craig posted on LinkedIn yesterday, some motivational quote about new beginnings and learning from challenges. Good for him, I said, meaning it. Maybe exile to the satellite office would teach him about boundaries, though I doubted it. People like Craig rarely changed. They just found new environments to exploit. You know, Marcus continued, lowering his voice. It found something interesting when they cleaned his computer. Dude had a whole folder of photos, people's lunches from the fridge, like he was shopping from a catalog. I nearly choked on my quinoa. The premeditation of it all was worse than I'd imagined. This wasn't opportunistic theft. It was a calculated campaign against anyone who dared bring appealing food to work. Over the next few days, I noticed unexpected changes rippling through the office. The kitchen became a social hub instead of a crime scene. People started sharing recipes, organizing potlucks, even creating a communal spice rack, clearly labeled very hot to atomic. My ghost pepper revenge had somehow transformed our toxic food culture into something collaborative. Sandra from accounting approached me Thursday afternoon. I wanted to thank you, she said quietly. Craig used to make comments about my Ethiopian food, calling it weird and smelly, but he sure seemed to enjoy stealing it twice a week. Stories poured in. The developer whose homemade kimchi disappeared. The project manager whose diabetic-friendly meals vanished, forcing her to manage blood sugar with vending machine snacks. The intern who'd stopped bringing his grandmother's Korean dishes because they were gone more often than not. Craig had been an equal opportunity food thief, taking advantage of everyone too polite or too intimidated to fight back. Friday afternoon, I found a gift on my desk, a bottle of artisanal hot sauce with a note reading, "For the office's guardian of lunch justice." No signature, but the handwriting looked like David Kim's. Even upper management appreciated what I'd done, though they'd never admit it officially. I sat at my desk, spinning the hot sauce bottle and reflecting on the whole insane situation. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it professional? Definitely not. But sometimes, when the system fails you, when HR treats theft as a minor inconvenience, when your carefully crafted boundaries are repeatedly violated, sometimes you have to speak in a language people understand. And Craig? He understood capsaicin. My computer pinged with a message. A recruiter reaching out about a senior UX position at a startup downtown. Better pay, equity options. And, she noted specifically, a kitchen with working security cameras and a zero-tolerance policy on lunch theft. Word of my ghost pepper justice had spread beyond architect, turning me into some sort of corporate folk hero. I glanced at my bento box, sitting clean and proud on my desk. 3 weeks ago, I'd been the woman who silently accepted theft, who ate sad cafe salads while someone else enjoyed my cooking. Now I was the woman who'd stood up for every stolen lunch, every dismissed complaint, every minor inconvenience that wasn't minor at all. The recruiter's message waited for a response. Maybe it was time for a change, to find a workplace that respected boundaries from the start. Or maybe I'd stay and help build the better culture that was emerging from the ashes of Craig's career. Either way, I'd be bringing my lunch. And nobody, absolutely nobody, would dare touch it. I smiled, opened my bento box, and enjoyed every single bite of my meal in peace. Amazing how much better food tastes when it's seasoned with justice and just a hint of ghost pepper vindication. Spice, as they say, makes everything nice, especially revenge served at precisely 1,000 Scoville units. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of spicy workplace justice, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts or similar experiences. Have you ever dealt with a lunch thief? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments.